That is not to say, you know, I mean, I think you know the kind of person I'm talking about.
You have
People are
way too
offended
many
by
drinks
every.
on.
I have way too many drinks on the stage.
Yeah,
You
have
are
way
so
too many
right. Let's kick some of these right off the stage.
I was gonna say, like, come on.
I'm kidding. It's part of the comedy joke show. Seriously though, yeah, some people overreact. But that's not to say there aren't things to be offended by. There's plenty of shit on the internet to be horribly offended by. Everybody's got their own thing, and that's cool. That's what makes this a beautiful planet that we live on, because different people have different viewpoints. I personally will not stand for bullying. That's kind of my hot button. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, and I was mercilessly bullied on a daily basis. Now, when I say bully, I don't mean that they pointed at me and called me a faggot. They did that. But it was so much worse than that. That was bad enough. I mean, like, groups of boys waited for me outside of school and then, like, frog marched me to a field and took turns kicking my ass and spitting into my mouth. It was like that level of bullying. Luckily for me, it was worse at home. So when after getting my ass kicked at school, I'd go home with a black eye, and then my stepfather would beat me up because I was a faggot. That was the word he used.
Oh my God.
So I really, really had an incredibly hard time in this town. And on an almost daily basis, I heard these words. This is a true story. On an almost daily basis, I heard these words. You should kill yourself.
Oh, no.
Nobody likes you. Your own family, do your family a favor and kill yourself. Do this school a favor and kill yourself. Do this town a favor and kill yourself. And I heard this all the time. And like a bad pop song that you hear over and over again, you're like, you swear you're never gonna like that song. And you just hear it every single day, and eventually you're like at a Starbucks one day and you're like, I'm in love with your body. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! It sinks in. I make jokes about it now because what is comedy if not tragedy plus time? But I promise you that as a teenager, none of this was funny. None of it was funny, and I did ultimately decide to commit suicide. It got to that point. And I had a revelation. Revelations don't always come from nowhere. No man is an island. We are affected by the people around us, whether we realize it or not. And there was one night in this horrible town in New Jersey, and I went to the diner because that's what you do late at night. There's nothing else to fucking do in New Jersey. And so I went to the diner at 2 in the morning, and I walked the gauntlet, I had to walk through the diner, and like all the big knucklehead Jersey Shore types, like, hey, fucking faggot, you fucking weirdo, hey, fucking Dracula, I could hear the whole thing all the way to the back. I take a booth all the way in the back. I pull out my sketchbook, which might as well have been a TARDIS because I could escape into my sketchbook. I can draw new worlds, write about new worlds and escape into them. And I'm sitting in the back, and then all of a sudden I hear a commotion, and I look up, and in the front door of the diner, causing quite a stir, is like this parade of people, and there were people dressed as vampires. There were people dressed as aliens. There were men dressed as women. There were women dressed as men. All I could think to myself was, who the fuck are they and how can I get to know them? And they all walked in and they sat down. And it's funny because, of course, all the jock boneheads had something to say. And these people were just like, psh, who cares? And they all sat down in a booth. And after a while, one of them got up and came up to me and said, you look kind of lonely over here. Why don't you come sit with us? Aww. And it is exactly that kind of thing that changes lives and saves lives. We live in a world where, you're in the goth scene and someone is dressed a little differently than you and you're like, they're doing goth wrong. Fuck them. I'll never hang out with them. We need to reach out to people who don't quite fit in. The people who don't quite fit in are the people who most should be reached out to. And I saw that, and that day I was the guinea pig, if you will. And I went and I sat with them, and I said, I don't mean to offend you guys in any way, but what's going on here? Like, are you coming from a costume party? They're like, nah, there's this movie we go to see every Saturday night. And I was like, You go to see the same movie every Saturday night. They're like, oh yeah, it's awesome. We throw like toast at the screen. We yell at the movie. Like, you yell at the movie? What the fuck is wrong with you? And they said, next Saturday, you're coming with us. And they took me to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And it changed my perspective on everything, because up until I met those people, as a teenager, you may not know that there are people outside of your little town who are different from the people in your town. You may not know that. And I didn't know that. I thought I was the only person who liked horror and science fiction and kinky shit. And, you know, I thought I was the only one. And then I suddenly realized that there were other people. And so, the day after, the day I had decided to end my life, instead I ran away from home. And I went to New York City, and I had no friends, and I had no job, and I had nowhere to live. But the moment my pointy, skull-buckled boot touched Manhattan soil, or as we call it there, sidewalk, everything changed. Instantly, everything. People walked up to me and they were like, are you famous? I don't know who you are, but you look like you must be famous. Can I take your picture? You have a great look. Will you be in my movie? Wait a minute. You make stop motion animated films in your basement? That's fascinating. I'm like, it is? Like, yes. And I realized on that day that there was never anything wrong with me. There was something wrong with those closed-minded people in that tiny little shit town.